and we are joined by a spectacular leader and guest, McKenna Samson, who's with Freedom to Read. Welcome, McKenna.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here and to be able to represent the Freedom to Read team at Penn America.
Let's talk about Penn America and Freedom to Read because, hello, we love them at Moms Rising. Moms across America love them. Can you share for people who aren't as familiar with Penn America and Freedom to Read what you all are and what's happening?
Sure. Penn America is a free expression organization. We focus mainly on literary topics and issues. We also cover issues here in the United States domestically, and we also work with writers abroad. And we really focus on the freedom to read, the freedom to write, and the freedom to learn. The Freedom to Read team, which I am representing today, is our K through 12 team, and we have been established since 2021. We have been tracking book bans across the United States in public schools over the last 5 years, and we are continuing on with our book ban research and tracking at this moment. And part of that is also tracking legislation that impacts the freedom to read and impacts access to books, and makes it easier for folks who are seeking to censor books in the classroom to do so. And so we are also tracking some of those really harmful bills that have been introduced or have been passed on the state and federal levels.
One thing that's really important and that I can't believe that I'm asking, can we say hello 2026? You have to ask the obvious questions. Here we go. Why is freedom to read important? Yes, I had to ask that.
The freedom to read is important because book bans and the movement to censor books and remove books from classrooms and library shelves have been on the rise. They are a very organized movement and they have been active for the last several years. In doing so, they have actually impacted the amount of books that have or that are accessible. Nearly 23,000 books that we have tracked since the year 2021 have been censored from classrooms and libraries across the United States and public schools. So with that growing number, we want to make sure that we are really on top of understanding where these bans are coming from on a local level, because they are primarily coming on a local level, but also ensuring that we are keeping track of where they're happening and why they are happening.
And as we're looking at the freedom to read and the importance of books, sometimes people are like, we only have to read short one sentence things on social media. Or maybe we only need 10 seconds of a video on social media. But no, we need critical thinking in the United States of America. And we need empathy. Studies show that even if you just read a Harry Potter book, you increase your empathy by like a bazillion trillion. Yes, I did make up that number. I admit it. But we need empathy now more than ever. And you don't necessarily get empathy from a one sentence kind of content that you read. You need a book. You need to pretend that you're walking in somebody else's shoes.
Mhm.
And can you talk a little bit about how getting away from book culture is kind of hurting our critical thinking and our learning for young people? And so when we limit the books and the ways that people can walk into other people's shoes, we're limiting our critical thinking, our empathy, our ability to think about things from multiple angles. And we need to think about things from multiple angles to have solutions. And so I'm mad about book bans. I'm sure you can tell. But I wondered if you could share your perspective on the importance of just being able to immerse yourselves and ourselves in another world through books.
Sure. Books can oftentimes be the very first time that a student is learning about different cultures, different people, different experiences in the world that they themselves may not particularly have experienced. So they can learn more about their peers, the world. They can form their own opinions from reading books, whether they are fiction or nonfiction, because you can learn a lot from both of those genres. It's also oftentimes validating for some students if they don't see themselves reflected in literature or in the world around them. It can be very distressing for them. So having access to books in which they see themselves in characters, or they can relate to memoirs about real people, or they can relate to history about things that are important to them, it allows them to elevate themselves, to open their minds, like you had said, developing more empathy for one another. And without access to books in which they maybe will not have the opportunity to have that access, it can definitely impact their ability to learn more about other people. You find people are often maybe a bit more closed-minded. They are ignorant of the world around them. They are unsure of things about of which they have never learned about. So it's important to have access to books because it really can be an outlet or and a channel to experiences that you maybe have never had before, and maybe it'll help you learn more things about yourself as well.
There's some really bad legislation that's been introduced to ban books, and sometimes the legislation can have a title that says one thing but actually mean something else inside the legislation. I'm wondering if you could talk about how Republican leaders in Congress are attacking access to books and attacking the freedom to read and attacking education. What's happening? What are the bills that are in Congress right now that we should all be aware of?
So HR 7661 was introduced in the last couple of months, and it has absolutely become the topic of conversation in many of the literary circles, especially with other authors as well. So this is a great example of Congress tasking itself with deciding what books belong in schools. And it's very problematic because it really does show that it's a government overreach, and it really affects public schools and libraries. Oftentimes, these decisions are made on a local level within the school district, and the federal government is essentially putting itself in the shoes of the local school district and, making these decisions for them. Luckily, this bill is still being heard in Congress, so it has not been passed, but it did get voted out of the Education Committee, so that is an issue. But it essentially would limit the books that are available to students, and it would erase queer and trans people from books and classroom materials.
So, how can people take action?
So, the first mode of action that we are definitely encouraging folks is that while this is a very scary legislation and it may feel like it is, telling you what to do, we are urging people not to overcomply because you are making it a lot easier for the folks who are sponsoring this bill to, assert their dominance over what we are teaching children in the classrooms and the books that they have access to. We are also urging people to visit our website, pen.org, and fill out our every action letter to write to your local representative and urge them not to support this bill. The bill really does focus on a very limited number of books that would impact the trans community, the LGBTQIA community, as well as books that feature people, characters, and stories of color. But they are also asserting that it is appropriate that classic works that they have defined are appropriate for the classroom. And so it essentially would continue to censor identities, which really is so problematic. And we want to make sure that they are not going to have their job made any easier for them.
Do you think there's hope, and what's giving you hope right now?
I do think that there is hope. I think that oftentimes you see that when we are in situations that can be very difficult right now with all of the difficult issues going on across the world, both within the literary world and the general world around us, that folks are not going to be comfortable. They're not going to be happy with these conditions, and they're going to want to see change, whether that is in the form of voting for representatives that definitely reflect how they are feeling, or if it is protesting. There are different ways that folks can resist some of the harmful policies that we are seeing, but particularly using their voice to stand up for themselves, their families, their community members. That is what's giving me hope, seeing that folks have been very outspoken and are continue to be outspoken. It really makes me happy to see folks using their platforms, particularly authors, to speak up for themselves, to speak up for members of their community, to speak up for their peers. Students are also showing up for themselves. They are doing school walkouts. They are writing letters to the administrators in their schools. We are seeing teachers also participating, as well as librarians. So knowing that people within the community are caring about one another gives me a lot of hope. And while, working in this space, it can be very limiting, and just seeing some of the negative, it does make me happy to know that there are folks who want to see change and are definitely working towards that change.
And one of the things, I agree with you on all of that, but one of the things that's giving me hope is that we have been winning these book ban wars at the state level, and in states that are not necessarily red or blue or any kind of thing, but purple places. And so when we look at polling, particularly of moms, over 80% of moms, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Libertarians, they want their kids to be educated and have access to appropriate educational material that teaches critical thinking. And when you look at what's in a lot of these book bans, that is totally appropriate educational material that's age appropriate. Like, don't listen to the hype, people, if you hear about these book bans and hear kind of like, there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation about what's in the books that are being banned. And, some of my very favorite books as a young person are on some of the ban lists. I'm like, what the heck? I learned so much from those books. And do you have a favorite banned book?
So my favorite banned book is actually The Bluest Eye by Toni
I
Morrison.
love that book.
It was definitely one of the more mature books that I read when I was in high school, but it was actually presented to me in my high school English class as a banned book, and it made me more interested in actually reading the book. Toni Morrison is one of the most banned authors for sure across the board, but I think a lot of her literature is very important, and I'm very thankful to be able to have access as an adult, but also when I was in high school, to that book. And I think that it is incredible and had such a great lesson at the end of it too.
I agree. I mean, I need to go reread that. But when I was younger, also in high school, reading The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, hello, if you haven't read it yet, please read it. That was a formative book for me. It was a book where you think like, okay, it was an immersive book. Obviously, she's a spectacular writer that really brings you into a story, and you experience kind of walking in somebody else's shoes in a way that gives an important perspective that maybe you wouldn't have had if you didn't read that book. And so I think that book is a great example of a banned book that, was public school curriculum for me growing up. This is not an inappropriate book at all. It's in fact very appropriate for expanding our ability to think critically about what policies will and won't help people, how people are experiencing life, all the things, you all the things. Do you have another favorite banned book? Now I want to know.
Oh, I also really love All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. I know that was it's in our banned book index, which is also on our website, and they are just a fantastic author. I have both the hard copy and I listened to the audiobook as well because I was reading the book on vacation, and it's a fantastic memoir. And you just learn so much about the experience that they had growing up and the family structure. And I think it was just a very heartfelt book, and I really love the memoir. I also had the opportunity to meet them when I was in DC. This was probably a year or two ago at the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference, and they were so nice.
Oh, I love that book too. You have good taste in books.
Thank you.
Hello. I love that book. Oh, this is interesting. So great. Okay, now we only have about a minute left, and I want everybody to join, support, pay attention to both Freedom to Read and PEN America. Can you share how people can track, stay involved, get involved over time? Where can they find you?
You can find us at our website, pen.org, pen.org. We are also on Blue Sky at PEN America. We are also on Facebook, LinkedIn, and we are also on Threads.
Thank you so much. Do you have any parting words for people with last advice about how to save your favorite books?
My parting words for you are, do not overcomply. Some of this legislation is to scare you and it is to make you feel uncomfortable, but you do not want to make their job any easier by doing so. And also not to lose hope. I know that things are difficult at this moment, but they won't be difficult forever.
That is such good advice. Such good advice. Thank you so much for being on, McKenna Samson with Freedom to Read and PEN America. Thanks for all you do. Thank you for keeping the books open for us all to read. Thank you for keeping freedom available. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me.